Welcome. What you are about to hear is presented as an archival dossier, a deliberate mapping of the galaxy. Not just the movies, but the full transmedia Star Wars universe from its mythic origins to its present day continuity. This document is framed like a Coruscant archive entry, a technical blueprint, a classification stamp of Level 1 authorization, and a datum of time set at 0 BBY. Think of this opening page as our base map. It establishes three promises. First, we will treat Star Wars as a living historical record. Second, we will read that record both as in-universe chronology and as real-world production history. And third, we will trace how disparate works connect into a single curated continuity. Keep that archival mindset as we proceed. We are building a comprehensive reference, a working notebook for a 25,000-year fictional history. We begin with the narrative core, the Skywalker saga. The films most audiences know are organized into three trilogies. The prequel trilogy explores the fall of the Jedi and centers on Anakin Skywalker. It was released in the 1990s and 2000s and dramatizes the Republic's collapse and the rise of the Sith. The original trilogy, released in the 1970s and 1980s, follows Luke Skywalker and the Age of Rebellion as the Rebel Alliance fights the Galactic Empire. It anchors the franchise's moral and cinematic identity. The sequel trilogy, released in the 2010s, follows Rey in the rise of the First Order era and wrestles with legacy through characters like Kylo Ren. Each trilogy presents a distinct core conflict, protagonist and antagonist, and together they form the narrative spine of the modern Star Wars mythos. As we study the galaxy, remember that the Skywalker saga functions as both a dramatic center and a launching pad for many expanded stories. To organize time in universe, we use the BBY/ABY axis, before and after the Battle of Yavin, where 0 marks the destruction of the first Death Star in Episode 4, A New Hope. That battle is the franchise's epoch, the way our Gregorian calendar centers on a pivotal event. Everything before it is BY, everything after it is EBY. Using that scale, the discovery of Anakin occurs around 932 BBY in The Phantom Menaces. The Andor series opens around 95 BBY, and The Force Awakens sits near plus 34 EBY. This dating lets us anchor stories across centuries and millennia, compare eras, and understand cause and effect in universe. When you read timelines or cross-reference characters, always convert media placement into BBY, ABY terms. It's the shared coordinate system for every story we'll map. Now expand the timeline into 9 named eras, a layered historical framework that stretches from the dawn of the Jedi, roughly 25,000 BBY, to speculative futures beyond 50 ABY. Each era has a distinctive theme and representative media. The dawn of the Jedi marks Force discovery and origins. The Old Republic era is defined by galactic expansion and epic Jedi-Sith conflicts. The High Republic is a golden age for the Jedi, recently explored in books and series like the Acolyte and Young Jedi Adventures. Moving forward, the fall of the Jedi covers the Clone Wars and the rise of Palpatine. The reign of the Empire covers the Purge, early Resistance, and media such as Solo and Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Age of Rebellion captures the original trilogy and Rogue One. The New Republic era covers Reconstruction and shows like The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. The rise of the First Order leads into the sequels, and the New Jedi Order points to a post-sequel future under active development. Treat these eras like historical epochs. Each shapes institutions, technology, and the political contours of the galaxy. Before 2014, Lucasfilm organized continuity through a multi-tier canon hierarchy. At the top was G-Canon, George Lucas's films and direct proclamations, the ultimate authority. T-Canon, television, rated next and included shows like The Clone Wars that were often guided by Lucas and Dave Filoni. Below them sat C Canon, the large body of the expanded universe, novels, games, and comics that filled gaps but were vulnerable to retcon. S Canon contained early informal works used selectively, and N Canon housed alternate interpretations and non canonical fun. This tiered approach helped creators decide which sources overrode others, and it structured how stories were written and referenced across decades. Keep that system in mind because it explains how many characters and plot lines were once treated, and why a later reset would change how all works relate to each other. That later change is central to modern Star Wars. The 2014 reset that separated Legends from the new unified canon. Legends describes the pre-2014 expanded universe, a productive alternate timeline that Lucasfilm delisted as official continuity. Canon, by contrast, is the story group's unified approach. Everything curated post-2014, films, TV, books, and games, is treated as one integrated timeline. Lucasfilm's approach is pragmatic. Legends is not erased, it's curated. Elements like Grand Admiral Thrawn have been selectively reintroduced into canon when they serve new stories. The practical impact is huge. Shared continuity allows characters and plot lines to migrate across media without conflicting authorities, but it also means some fan favorite Legends elements remain optional unless recanonicalized. Understanding that split, Legends as a repository, canon as the living continuity, is essential for accurate scholarship and for predicting which elements may reappear. Lucasfilm's post-2014 strategy expanded the universe most aggressively through television. Visualize the Skywalker saga at the center with two concentric orbital rings, the inner ring for animation, the outer ring for live action. Animation series such as The Clone Wars, Rebels, The Bad Batch, and Young Jedi Adventures occupy the inner ring and provide deep serialized storytelling. The outer ring houses live-action series like The Mandalorian, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, and Ahsoka, which often draw characters and mythic developments outward from animated roots. This orbital model explains how the franchise grew. Television became the primary engine for character development, world building, and cross-pollination rather than an afterthought. For anyone studying Star Wars, the television catalog is now as essential as the films because it carries character arcs and continuity that inform the whole canon. That leads directly to the transmedia pipeline. Animation has become a proving ground for characters and concepts that later migrate to live action. Series like The Clone Wars and Rebels incubate personalities, visual designs, and narrative beats. From those incubators, lines are drawn to live action destinations: The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Rogue One, and more. The modern effect is practical. Animation allows creators to test fan resonance, refine arcs, and establish lore in a lower-risk medium before committing to high-budget live-action portrayals. This pipeline has flipped the old dynamic where animation followed film. Today, animation often precedes, informs, and enriches the live-action storylines, creating a deliberate pathway for crossovers and major character introductions. To make this concrete, examine three emblematic transmedia crossovers. Ahsoka Tano began as Anakin Skywalker's apprentice in The Clone Wars, voiced by Ashley Eckstein. She evolved into a franchise centerpiece and was later portrayed in live action by Rosario Dawson in The Mandalorian and her own Ahsoka series. Bo-Katan Kryze first appeared in animation across The Clone Wars and Rebels and then returned to live action in The Mandalorian. Notably played by Katie Sackhoff, who voiced the character in animation and performed her in live action, making her a rare continuity constant. Sabine Wren originated in Rebels, voiced by Tia Sircar, and transitions into live action in Ahsoka, portrayed by Natasha Liu Bordizzo, a narrative arc from graffiti tagging Mandalorian to emerging Jedi apprentice. These examples show how identity, performance, and story travel across media to build a deeper, continuous character history. The Ghost Crew provides another rich case study. Hera Syndulla, the Ghost's captain, starts in Rebels and the Bad Batch, voiced by Vanessa Marshall, and later appears live action in Ahsoka, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Her arc shifts from pilot and strategist to a recognized rebel leader. Ezra Bridger originates in Rebels, Taylor Gray, and according to the texts on this dossier, later appears in live action in Ahsoka. His dramatic arc includes sacrificing himself to exile Grand Admiral Thrawn, a major plot inflection that ties eras together. Zeb Orrelios, the Lasat warrior, moves from animation into CGI live performance in The Mandalorian, voiced across mediums by Steve Blum. Even the droid Chopper, once the surly animated astromech voiced by Dave Filoni, migrates into films such as Rogue One and into Ahsoka. The Ghost and her crew illustrate how an animated ensemble can be elevated into the central fabric of live-action storytelling. Smugglers, bounty hunters, and scoundrels have always been flexible carriers for crossover. Boba Fett's trajectory is instructive. He first appeared in a 1978 animated holiday special segment and then became a live-action icon in the original and later modern series. Technically, one of the earliest examples of animation to film migration. Cad Bane, a notorious Duros bounty hunter created for the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch, has been voiced by Corey Burton and is being adapted into live-action media. Saw Gerrera moved from animation into live action, portrayed by Forrest Whitaker in Rogue One and later appearing in series such as Andor, exemplifying how a politically radical character can bridge storytelling modes. Hondo Onaka even crossed into the parks as a physical animatronic in Galaxy's Edge, demonstrating that crossovers can extend beyond screen media into real-world attractions. These cases show the cultural and commercial power of characters that resonate across formats. Imperial figures and unusual outliers follow similar patterns. Grand Admiral Thrawn is a paradigmatic example of Legends material being reclaimed. Originally a 1991 expanded universe creation, he was reintroduced into modern continuity through Rebels and later Ahsoka, portrayed in animation and live action by Lars Mikkelsen. The Grand Inquisitor and the Fifth Brother exemplify how villains born in Rebels were adapted into live-action stories like Obi-Wan Kenobi, expanding the threat of the Inquisitorius on stage and screen. Huyang, the ancient lightsaber crafting droid from the Clone Wars, appears in Ahsoka, and the slide notes a notable production detail. The voice contribution of David Tennant was distinguished in awards discussions. Even politicians like Ryder Azadi and Jai Kell from Lothal make the jump into live action, sometimes played by the same actor. Clancy Brown is noted as providing continuity for Ryder Azadi, reinforcing that cross-casting can preserve performance identity across media. These patterns emphasize how both heroes and antagonists migrate to support a consistent historical record. When approaching the franchise as a viewer or researcher, you must choose a viewing architecture and understand its trade-offs. Release order preserves historic audience experience. It keeps landmark reveals like Luke's parentage intact and lets you observe the evolution of special effects and storytelling over decades. Its drawbacks are narrative discontinuity and jarring stylistic shifts between eras. Chronological order, watching in BBY-ABY sequence, offers a smooth in-universe history from the prequels through the sequels, making causal relationships clearer. But chronological order can spoil cinematic surprises and complicate the integration of TV series with films. For newcomers, I generally recommend release order to preserve dramatic beats. For scholarly study, chronological order supplemented with series placed at their BBY/ABY coordinates, yields the best analytic clarity. Either way, be deliberate. Choose the architecture that serves your objective. Looking ahead, the franchise is plotted along new targets and trajectories. The dossier lists prioritized projects. The Mandalorian and Grogu aim for May 2026, positioned in the New Republic era and framed as a point where live-action television can transition back towards cinematic scale. Star Wars, Starfighter, slated for May 2027 in this roadmap, is placed in the new Jedi Order era, signaling an expansion of post-Rise of Skywalker narratives. Development projects include Dawn of the Jedi, where a director like James Mangold is described as exploring Force origins 25,000 years past. A new Jedi Order film with Charmin Obaid-Chinoy and Daisy Ridley's Rey, continuing the post-sequel's reconstruction, and a future trilogy from Simon Kinberg. Treat these items as directional. They map thematic priorities, origins, institutional rebuilding, and new epochal chapters that will influence the canon's shape for years to come. To conclude, consider the franchise's enduring architecture. At the center sits a convergence point, a unified canon that functions as a living mythos. The historical framework has widened from a single trilogy into a tapestry spanning 25,000 years and every genre. While the transmedia engine, animation, publishing, and television, now powers the cinematic universe rather than playing second fiddle. By resetting continuity and curating legends, Lucasfilm created a single, malleable digital mythology in which movies, shows, books, and characters actively shape a common galactic history. For the scholar or fan, that means Star Wars is best studied as an interconnected system. Track eras by BBY/ABY, map character migrations between media, and watch how narrative authority is negotiated by the story group. Thank you for listening. Carry this dossier as your working map, and you will be equipped to read, interpret, and contribute knowledgeably to the ongoing history of a galaxy far, far away.